Nick, how do you think Jordan's Bulls would be judged today? Feel free to start with the Danny Ainge angle. Either one, really. Go ahead.
I got you. So, So let's think about this for a moment. What would the headlines be if those first few years in Chicago were going on right now? Well, obviously, in Jenna's hometown in upstate New York, there would be a headline, "Local woman suffers from some neurological disorder, obsessed with Danny Ainge." But set that one aside. The other headlines
I was in high school.
If Michael Jordan's, if Michael Jordan's first few years in Chicago were playing out right now, these would be the headlines we would see. Why can't Michael Jordan win more than he loses? The Bulls had losing records each of the first 3 years. That second year, the famous '86 team that when Jordan scored 63, the headline going into the playoffs would be this: are the '86 Bulls the worst playoff team ever? They had the worst record in modern NBA history. They won 30 games to make the playoffs. And then my favorite one would have been if it was today's media, Broussard, covering those early Jordan Bulls. In '87, after they got swept out of the playoffs again, after a game where Jordan was 9 of 30, when they hadn't won a playoff game since his rookie season. They'd lost 7 consecutive playoff games, swept 2 years in a row. You know this article would have been written. Should the Bulls trade Michael Jordan? Can't win this way. Can't win a championship with hero ball. That would absolutely be, in today's media climate, people would be saying, got to trade him. Ball hog, ego, can't win, can't beat the good teams, need more team ball. So, Broussard, I believe that's how those '80s Bulls would have been covered in today's media climate.
Why do I feel like Nick is making a LeBron is the GOAT argument here?
No. Whoa. I didn't say LeBron's name.
Fairness, let me say, that team you said was the worst playoff team ever. Remember, Jordan only played like 17 games that year. So that they would not have gone down as the worst team ever had he played the full season. But ultimately, Nick, your point is correct. And Kevin mentioned earlier how tough it was to be Michael Jordan and the pressure that he was under day to day just because he was such a huge superstar. And I agree with Kevin on that point in 1996 or 98. But that is not even close to the amount of scrutiny that Michael Jordan would get today. It's not even close. There were no shows like this. There were no daily debate shows where they looked at every single, not just game, every single possession, every single potential game-winning shot that a player missed or made. I mean, it would have been incredible, the scrutiny that Jordan would have been under today with social media, the national debate shows, the national radio shows. Most sports radio shows at that time were local shows. So, and Michael Jordan is he's not the type of personality that loves always being in the spotlight. You know, we saw that he was a little burnout at times from the scrutiny and the constant media attention during his day. And you see when he retired, he's not a guy that, went into the studio booth and became a famous broadcaster, and he doesn't do a lot of interviews. That's just not who he is. So it would have been more difficult for Jordan to play in today's media climate. The gambling issue would have been front and center. I mean, he actually went to Atlantic City in the middle of the playoff series with the Knicks to gamble. That would have become a huge story. There are more leaks than ever today because it's so much easier to be in constant contact with GMs and executives and coaches and players throughout the league because of the technology. And so the way Jordan treated his teammates, all the issues with the front office, those would be stories now. Back then, people knew a little bit about it, but it wasn't nearly as covered as it would be today. And so all of those stories becoming huge, that would have created further distractions and potentially distractions that could have derailed that team. So it would have been even tougher for them to win those championships today, because all of these things would have come out. You know, we saw Michael Jordan being interviewed about Scottie Pippen's contract situation, and after a couple questions, he said, all right, let's talk about basketball now. That would have remained a constant topic on that Bulls team until Scottie Pippen got back, if not longer. And so, again, would have been a potential distraction that could have derailed the team.
And you played that off nicely. He was actually a lot more frustrated when he said it, too. He was like, anyone have questions about the game? You saw that it was starting to get to him. But Wilds, we know it's a different time now. It's a different league now, certainly different players. How do you think Jordan's Bulls would be judged today?
I thought what Broussard said was fascinating because I see two sides of it. On the one side, with the no social media pressure, I thought it was telling when he went back to North Carolina in rehab and started playing one-on-one, two-on-two, five-on-five, and then he returns to Chicago. He's like, they didn't know. So it's just fascinating that that could ever happen, that Michael Jordan is playing five-on-five basketball at the University of Carolina, and no one's like, University of North Carolina, everyone's like, I don't know. We didn't know. We had no intel on it. The thing about, I had a different takeaway from the Pippen interview, Broussard. I thought it was interesting to see how many microphones were in his face. There was about, I don't know, 30 microphones in his face. And it felt like, although there wasn't social media, maybe Jordan, if he played now, would have more distance. That he would be like, you know what, I'll grant 2 interviews. Everybody stay away. But you don't see 30 microphones against in the locker room anymore. So I thought that was a different amount of pressure. That was one of my takeaways, Chris. Did you see that, or did you have a different take?
That's a good point. The access to players back then was greater. I mean, you know, it wasn't too long before that players were actually flying charter flights, and the media would fly on the same flights as the players. So you had a lot more access. It wasn't too long before that the media could actually watch the entire practice. So you would have seen when Michael Jordan, early in his career, not toward the end, the media had been banned from all but the last 10 minutes at that point. But early in Jordan's career, you would have seen him going at teammates the way he did. You would have seen him having fights with teammates, and all of that would have been reported. You know, so you make a good point in that today the players don't have to talk as much as they used to. So Jordan may have been able to just say, "Look, I'm not talking today," and that would have been that.
And let's be honest, guys were protected differently. You saw in that clip, I don't know who the writer was, but you saw when Jordan's walking out of the locker room, you see a guy say to him, "Hey, Michael, I really hope you liked the piece." That was a guy who had written an article about him that was searching for Jordan's approval on it to hope to get more access from Michael in the future. The media environment's just different. I'm not saying it's better or worse, but it's just different. There was a period of time where it was, especially in baseball writing, if we want to go back 70, 80 years, where it was myth-making, creating these larger-than-life stories, which is why to this day, the legend of Babe Ruth will always, even though he was maybe the greatest baseball player ever, the legend outstrips the performance. And Jenna, there is a similar factor, if you will, with Jordan, especially because Jordan had made it very clear when a book was written about him that he did not like, he cut that writer out entirely, and everyone was on notice. Listen, you're going to handle me the way I want to be handled, or you won't be handling me at all. And I just don't know if that would be doable in today's media environment.
Well, that's an interesting point.
I wonder how happy Nick Wright would be covering Michael Jordan.
You're talking about the Jordan Rules by Sam Smith, which was a great book. But that type of stuff is coming out in the media now every other week. There'd be stories about that in the media, not just in a book that came years later. So you're absolutely right. But Jordan was criticized, Nick, earlier. And all the things you said, he can't win. He's just a scorer. He's a ball hog. He doesn't play team basketball. A lot of that stuff was said back then as well.
All All right, let's make a little transition here. It's an easy one from Jordan to LeBron. Nick hasn't devoted what appears to be his entire life to creating a list of the Kings' top 10 playoff performances. We can't judge him. It's not bad. We're at the halfway point here. Nick, which game do you have at number 5?
Number 5 gets us to one of the 3 biggest games of his career, even though it wasn't one of the 3 best games of his career. His 5th best playoff game. It's Game 5 is number 5 against the Warriors in 2016. 41-16-7, 3-3. Let me take you back in time a bit. This was supposed to be the coronation game for the 73-win Warriors. They were being asked before the game if they were better than the Showtime Lakers, much less better than the 2016 Cavs. Yet in this game, LeBron James, the 41 points stand out, but the 3 was just as important. 3 blocks in this game, 2 of which were a sign of things to come. 1 on Steph Curry in transition, which he would then duplicate in Game 6. Shortly thereafter, Steph would get ejected and his wife would accuse the league of being rigged. The other, and it's forgotten, on Andre Iguodala on a full fast break layup attempt that gets swatted against the glass. That would be a foreshadowing of the greatest defensive play in the history of the league. People call this the Draymond game because Draymond wasn't there and LeBron scored 41 points. LeBron then, of course, scores 41 the following game with Draymond there. But what gets forgotten about this game is this. Klay Thompson was lights out in the first half, scoring 26. LeBron matched him with 25, keeping the Cavs in it. Then LeBron and Kyrie took over in the third, lead the Cavs to a 15-point victory in an elimination game. Stave off elimination against the Warriors, only to have the next couple games, well, we know how those went. So number 5 for LeBron, 41-16-7, 3-3 against the 73-win Warriors in Oracle.
All right, Nick, good stuff.